The fluorescent lights in my kitchen seemed harsher than usual that Tuesday morning as I stared at my phone, reading the text message that would unravel everything I thought I knew about my family. It was from my cousin Beth, someone I hadn't spoken to in months, and her words hit me like a physical blow. "Sarah, I'm really worried about you. Monica told us all about your problem. We want to help, but you have to admit you need it first." My hands trembled as I set the phone down on the granite countertop, my reflection catching in the black screen. What problem? What had my sister Monica been telling people? The morning sunlight streaming through my bay window suddenly felt too bright, too exposing, as if everyone could see through the carefully maintained facade of my suburban home. Before I reveal what really happened, please hit that subscribe button and like. I love hearing from viewers. What's your city? My name is Sarah Allen. I'm 45 years old, and until that moment, I thought I had a pretty normal relationship with my younger sister. Sure, Monica had always been the dramatic one in our family, the one who thrived on attention and occasionally embellished stories for effect. But this felt different. This felt calculated and cruel, in a way that made my stomach churn as I reread Beth's message 3 more times, hoping I had somehow misunderstood. The sound of footsteps on the hardwood stairs broke through my racing thoughts. My daughter Jessica appeared in the doorway, her dark hair still messy from sleep, wearing her favorite college sweatshirt that had seen better days. At 22, she had inherited my stubborn streak and her father's analytical mind, and right now, those keen eyes were studying my face with the intensity she usually reserved for her graduate school assignments. "Mom, you look like you've seen a ghost," Jessica said, padding barefoot across the kitchen to start the coffee maker. "What's wrong?" I held up my phone, not quite ready to voice what I was thinking. "Have you talked to Aunt Monica lately?" Jessica's expression shifted, a shadow crossing her features that I didn't like. "Actually, yeah. She called yesterday while you were at your book club meeting. She seemed really concerned about you." She paused, measuring her words carefully. "She asked a lot of questions about how you've been acting lately, whether I'd noticed anything different about you." The coffee maker gurgled to life, filling the silence that stretched between us. My heart was pounding now. That familiar sensation you get when you realize something terrible is happening, but you can't quite see the full scope of it yet. Jessica had always been protective of me, especially after her father and I divorced 3 years ago. And the careful way she was choosing her words told me she was trying to shield me from something. "What kind of questions?" I asked, though part of me already dreaded the answer. Jessica pulled 2 mugs from the cabinet, her movements more deliberate than usual. "She wanted to know if you'd been staying up late, if your eating habits had changed, if you seemed paranoid or agitated. She kept saying she was worried about your erratic behavior lately." She turned to face me, her expression troubled. "Mom, she made it sound like you were having some kind of breakdown or something worse." The pieces were starting to form a picture I didn't want to see. Monica had been systematically gathering information, building some kind of case against me with our extended family. But a case for what? I thought about the past few months, trying to remember any interactions with Monica that might have sparked this campaign. We'd had dinner together 3 weeks ago, a perfectly normal evening where we'd discussed our mother's upcoming birthday party and Monica's ongoing job search. She'd seemed fine, maybe a little more interested in my personal life than usual, but nothing that had raised any red flags. My phone buzzed with another text, this one from my Uncle Robert. "Your sister explained everything. We're not judging, but you need professional help." I showed the message to Jessica, watching her face pale as she read it. "Mom, what is she telling people?" Before I could answer, the doorbell rang, its familiar chime echoing through the house. Through the frosted glass panel beside the front door, I could see a tall figure with shoulder-length blonde hair. My best friend, Claire Martinez, stood on my front porch, holding what looked like a casserole dish and wearing the kind of expression that meant she was here for serious business. Claire had been my anchor since high school, the one person who could read my moods better than anyone and who never hesitated to show up when I needed her most. Her presence meant that whatever Monica had been spreading had reached beyond just family members. The knot in my stomach tightened as I walked to the front door, Jessica following close behind me. "I brought your favorite tuna noodle casserole," Claire said the moment I opened the door, but her usual warm smile was strained. "We need to talk." The three of us settled around my kitchen table, the casserole forgotten on the counter as Claire pulled out her own phone. Her dark eyes were filled with a mixture of concern and anger that I recognized from our teenage years when she'd been fiercely protective of our friendship group. "I ran into your sister at the grocery store yesterday," Claire began, her voice carefully controlled. "She cornered me by the produce section and spent 20 minutes telling me how worried she is about you. According to Monica, you've been exhibiting classic signs of drug addiction." The words hit me like a slap. "Drug addiction?" "She said you've been losing weight, staying up all night, becoming paranoid and suspicious of everyone around you. She claimed you've been making poor financial decisions and that your behavior has become increasingly unpredictable." Claire's voice grew harder with each word. "She said the family is planning some kind of intervention because you're in denial about your problem." Jessica's hand found mine across the table, her grip tight with protective fury. "That's insane. Mom, you haven't been doing any of those things." But even as my daughter defended me, I could see the seeds of doubt in her eyes. Because while I wasn't using drugs, some of what Monica had described wasn't entirely fabricated. I had lost about 15 pounds recently, but that was because I'd been training for my first half marathon. I had been staying up late, but I was working on a freelance graphic design project with a tight deadline. And yes, I'd been more careful with my finances lately, but that was because I was saving for a trip to Europe I'd been dreaming about for years. Monica had taken the normal adjustments of my life and twisted them into something sinister. She'd weaponized my positive changes and used them to paint a picture of addiction and decline. The realization was breathtaking in its calculated cruelty. "There's more," Claire continued, her jaw tight. "She told me that you'd started borrowing money from family members and not paying it back. She said you'd become secretive about your whereabouts and that you'd been lying about where you spend your time." I sat back in my chair, feeling like the air had been knocked out of my lungs. None of it was true, but I could see how Monica had constructed her narrative. She'd taken my increased privacy after the divorce, my new exercise routine, my work commitments, and my careful budgeting, then spun them into evidence of a drug problem that didn't exist. "Why?" Jessica asked, voicing the question that was screaming in my head. "Why would Aunt Monica do this?" That was what I couldn't understand. Monica and I had our differences, but this level of systematic destruction seemed to come from nowhere. We'd always been competitive as sisters, but this felt like something deeper, something more vindictive than sibling rivalry. Claire leaned forward, her expression grim. "Sarah, I think she's been planning this for a while. She had answers ready for every question I asked, and she seemed to know exactly what she wanted me to believe. This isn't just gossip getting out of hand. This is deliberate." The morning sun had shifted, casting longer shadows across my kitchen table as the three of us sat in stunned silence. My phone continued to buzz with messages from relatives I hadn't heard from in months, each one expressing concern for my supposed addiction. Each one another nail in the coffin, Monica was building around my reputation. The trap I'd missed finally sprang shut. Jessica suddenly looked up from her phone, her face pale. "Mom, look at this!" She turned her screen toward me, and I felt my stomach drop. It was Monica's social media profile. Post after post showed carefully curated photos of family gatherings, holiday celebrations, and casual get-togethers. But I noticed something that made my blood run cold. In every single photo from the past 6 months, I was either cropped out, positioned at the edge where I could be easily excluded, or missing entirely from events I had definitely attended. "She's been documenting my absence," I whispered, scrolling through the images. "Look at this one from Mom's birthday party in March. I'm standing right next to you in the original photo I have on my phone, but here—" "You've been completely edited out," Claire finished, her voice filled with disbelief. "Sarah, she's been building a visual narrative that you're not present for family events." Jessica leaned over my shoulder, pointing at the screen. "And look at the comments, Mom. People are asking where you are, and Monica keeps responding with things like, 'Sarah's going through a difficult time right now,' and 'we're hoping she gets the help she needs.'" I felt sick reading the responses from cousins and family friends. Monica had been laying groundwork for months, creating the impression that I was spiraling out of control and that she was the concerned sister trying to hold everything together. "This is beyond calculated," I said, my hands shaking as I set the phone down. "She's been systematically erasing me from family history while simultaneously spreading rumors about why I'm not there." Claire reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "The question is, what are we going to do about it? You can't let her destroy your relationships with everyone." "But how do I fight this?" I asked, feeling overwhelmed by the scope of Monica's deception. "If I start calling everyone and denying the drug allegations, won't that just make me look more desperate, like someone who's lying about their addiction?" Jessica stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. "There has to be a reason she's doing this. People don't just decide to destroy their sister's life for no reason." "Your mom and I have been trying to figure that out," Claire said. "Monica's always been competitive, but this is something else entirely." I thought back through the past year, trying to identify what might have triggered this campaign against me. My divorce had been finalized 8 months ago, which had been a positive change despite the initial difficulty. I'd started freelancing more successfully, built up my savings, and was finally feeling like myself again after years of an unhappy marriage. "Wait," I said slowly, a memory surfacing. "The inheritance." Both Claire and Jessica turned to look at me. "What inheritance?" Jessica asked. "Your grandmother left me her jewelry collection when she died 2 years ago. Monica always assumed it would go to her because she was the older sister, but Grandma specifically left it to me in her will." I paused, pieces clicking together in my mind. Monica was furious, but I thought she'd gotten over it. The collection isn't worth a fortune, but it has significant sentimental value. Claire nodded slowly. "And now you're financially stable, independent, and moving on with your life in ways that probably make her jealous." "But that still doesn't justify this," Jessica said, her voice hard. "She's trying to isolate you from your entire family." I picked up my phone again, scrolling through the messages that continued to flood in. Cousins expressing concern, aunts offering to help me find treatment programs, family friends saying they were praying for my recovery from an addiction I'd never had. "The worst part," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "is that some of these people have known me my entire life, and they believed her without even talking to me first." "That's because she's good at this," Claire said grimly. She knew exactly which relatives would be most susceptible to gossip, and which ones would spread the story without questioning it. Jessica sat back down, her jaw set with determination. We need to expose her lies, but we need to be smart about it. If we just start randomly calling people and defending you, it might backfire. What are you thinking? I asked. We need proof, Jessica said. Evidence that contradicts her story. Mom, you said you've been training for a half marathon. Do you have any documentation of that? Registration confirmations, training apps, photos from runs? I nodded, feeling a spark of hope. I have months of training data on my fitness app. Plus, I'm registered for the race next month. And the freelance work, Claire added. You must have contracts, emails, project deadlines that show why you've been staying up late. Plus, bank records showing your savings account growing, not money disappearing to buy drugs, Jessica continued. But even as we brainstormed ways to defend against Monica's lies, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were missing something bigger. The systematic nature of her campaign, the careful documentation, the months of preparation. It all suggested something more than jealousy over an inheritance or sibling rivalry. My phone buzzed with another message, and when I looked down at the screen, I felt my blood turn to ice. It was from Monica herself, and it contained just 4 words that changed everything I thought I knew about her motivations. The message from Monica was simple, but chilling. We need to talk. I stared at my phone, my hands trembling slightly. Jessica noticed immediately, leaning over to read the screen. Don't respond, she said quickly. Not yet. We need to think about this strategically. But what if she's ready to tell the truth? I asked, though even as I said it, I knew it was wishful thinking. Claire shook her head firmly. Honey, people who are ready to come clean don't spend months building elaborate lies first. This feels like damage control. My mother had been quiet during our planning session, but now she spoke up, her voice thoughtful. I've been thinking about what you said earlier, about how systematic this all seems. Monica always was methodical, even as a child. Remember when she convinced our parents that you broke her toy when we were 10? I did remember. Monica had spent weeks setting up that scenario, moving pieces around, creating evidence that wasn't there. I'd been grounded for a month. She's testing the waters now, Claire continued. Seeing if you'll panic, if you'll come to her begging to know what she's told people? Jessica nodded in agreement. And if you respond desperately, she'll know she has you exactly where she wants you. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Monica. I know you've seen my message. We really do need to talk. She's getting impatient, I observed, feeling a strange sense of power in that realization. Good, Jessica said with satisfaction. That means the silence is working. She expected you to come running, and when you didn't, it threw off her timeline. Claire moved closer to me on the couch. What exactly did Monica know about your life these past few months? I mean, what real information did she have access to? I thought carefully. We haven't been talking much, but she knew I'd been working late. I mentioned the freelance projects a few times when she asked what I was up to, and she definitely knew about the fitness routine because she made some snide comment about it last month. So she took real information and twisted it, my mother said, her voice growing angry. The late nights became staying up to use drugs. The exercise became trying to counteract the effects of addiction. It's actually pretty clever, Jessica admitted reluctantly. If anyone questioned the timeline or asked for specifics, there would be enough truth mixed in to make it believable. My phone rang suddenly, Monica's name flashing on the screen. We all stared at it for a moment. Answer it, Claire said firmly. But put it on speaker. We'll be right here with you. I took a deep breath and accepted the call. Hello, Monica. Finally. Monica's voice sounded strained, not at all like her usual confident tone. I've been trying to reach you. I've been busy, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. Look, I think there might be some misunderstandings going around the family, Monica said carefully. People are talking, and I'm worried some things might have been taken out of context. Jessica raised her eyebrows and mouthed misunderstandings with obvious disbelief. What kind of misunderstandings? I asked. There was a long pause. Well, you know how family gossip can be. Someone mentions being concerned about a relative, and suddenly it gets blown out of proportion. Monica, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. What exactly did you tell people about me? I didn't tell them anything that wasn't true, she said defensively. I mentioned that you'd been acting differently lately, staying up all night, losing weight, being secretive about money. People drew their own conclusions. Claire's face flushed with anger at Monica's casual admission. And you didn't think to correct those conclusions? I pressed. I thought maybe they were right to be concerned, Monica replied, her voice taking on a tone I recognized from childhood arguments. You have to admit, your behavior has been erratic. Erratic how? Jessica whispered urgently, gesturing for me to push back. Erratic how? I repeated. Come on, Monica said, sounding frustrated now. The weird hours, the obsession with exercise, the way you've been hoarding money instead of spending it on normal things. And don't get me started on how you've been avoiding family gatherings. I've been building a freelance business and training for a half marathon, I said firmly. Those are normal, healthy activities. If you say so? Monica's tone dripped with skepticism. But you can understand why people might be worried. My mother gestured to the phone and mouthed, Ask her directly. Monica, did you or did you not tell our relatives that you thought I was using drugs? The silence stretched so long, I wondered if the call had dropped. Finally, Monica spoke, her voice cold and controlled in a way that sent chills down my spine. What I told them was the truth as I saw it. And there's more truth coming that you won't be able to explain away so easily. Before I could respond, she hung up. We sat in stunned silence for several moments, processing what had just happened. Did she just threaten you? Jessica asked, her voice incredulous. It sounded like it, I replied, my mind reeling. Claire was staring at my phone with the expression of deep concern. What did she mean about more truth coming? What else could she possibly have planned? The weight of Monica's final words settled over me like a dark cloud. Whatever she'd done so far was apparently just the beginning, and I had no idea what else she might have in store. The silence in Mom's living room felt thick and oppressive after Monica's ominous parting words. I stared at my phone's blank screen, my hands still trembling slightly from the adrenaline of the confrontation. The afternoon sunlight streaming through the gauze curtains seemed too bright, too cheerful for the darkness that had just settled over our family. I can't believe she actually admitted it, I said finally, my voice coming out hoarse. After weeks of wondering if I was being paranoid, she just confessed. Jessica leaned forward in her chair, her elbows resting on her knees. And then threatened you with something worse. That's not normal sibling rivalry. That's calculated malice. Mom had gone very quiet, her face pale as she processed what she'd just heard. She sat perched on the edge of the couch beside me, her hands clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles had turned white. The weight of realizing that one daughter had been systematically undermining the other seemed to age her before my eyes. I keep thinking about Thanksgiving dinner, Mom said slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. When Aunt Ruth pulled me aside and asked if you were getting help. She seemed so genuinely concerned, and I had no idea what she was talking about. I told her you were doing wonderfully, that you'd never been healthier or more focused. What did she say to that? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. She got this look, like she felt sorry for me, like I was naive or in denial. Mom's voice cracked slightly. Now I understand why. Monica had already poisoned the well. The betrayal hit me in waves. It wasn't just that Monica had lied about me. It was the deliberate, sustained nature of it. She had crafted a narrative and sold it to our extended family with enough conviction that they pitied our mother for not seeing the truth. The calculated cruelty of it left me feeling hollow. Jessica reached over and squeezed my shoulder. We need to figure out what she meant by more truth coming. What else could she possibly have planned? I closed my eyes, trying to think through Monica's mindset. She's always been competitive, but this feels different, more desperate, like she needs me to fail at something. Has anything changed recently in your relationship with her? Mom asked. Some trigger that might have set this off? I thought back over the past few months, searching for a catalyst. The only thing I can think of is the freelance business. It's been going really well, better than I expected. I mentioned to her a few weeks ago that I might be able to quit my day job by next year if things keep growing. And how did she react? Jessica asked. She seemed dismissive, said freelancing was unstable and that I was being unrealistic. The memory stung more now, colored by this new understanding of Monica's intentions. I thought she was just being protective, the way older sisters sometimes are. Mom shook her head slowly. This isn't protection. This is sabotage. The word hung in the air like an accusation. Sabotage. It felt too dramatic for a family dispute, but there was no other way to describe what Monica had done. She had systematically worked to damage my reputation and relationships, and apparently, she wasn't finished. We need to be proactive, Jessica said, her voice taking on the focused tone she used when solving problems at work. If she's planning something else, we can't just wait for it to happen. But what can we do? I asked, feeling helpless. Call everyone in the family and explain that Monica's been lying? That makes me sound paranoid, and after everything she's already told them, they might not believe me anyway. The frustration was building in my chest, like pressure in a kettle. Monica had played this perfectly, positioning herself as the concerned sister while making me look unstable. Any attempt to defend myself could be twisted to support her narrative. My phone buzzed with a text message, and all three of us tensed. For a moment, I was afraid to look, worried it might be Monica with another cryptic threat. But when I checked the screen, it was from my bank, a routine notification about a deposit from one of my freelance clients. Wait, I said, staring at the message. A terrible possibility was beginning to form in my mind. What if she's planning to mess with my business somehow? She knows I've been putting everything into building it up. If something happened to damage my professional reputation? Jessica's eyes widened with understanding. That would explain your recent success as a trigger. And it would be devastating to your future plans. But how could she interfere with your work? Mom asked. She doesn't know your clients. She knows enough, I said, my stomach dropping as I realized how vulnerable I actually was. She knows the names of some of the companies I work with. She's seen my social media posts about projects, and she's smart enough to figure out how to cause problems if she really wanted to. The room fell quiet again as we all contemplated this possibility. My freelance business was built on relationships and reputation. it wouldn't take much to plant seeds of doubt with the wrong people at the wrong time. "We're getting ahead of ourselves," Mom said finally, though she didn't sound convinced. Maybe she was just lashing out because she got caught. People say things they don't mean when they're cornered. But even as she spoke, I could see the worry in her eyes. She knew Monica as well as I did, knew that our family had always underestimated her capacity for holding grudges and playing the long game. My phone buzzed again, and this time it was Monica. "We need to talk in person. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., that coffee shop on Maple Street you like so much. Come alone, or everyone will know the real truth about what you've been hiding." The message felt like ice water in my veins. Everyone will know the real truth about what you've been hiding. What did she think she knew? What did she think she could prove? "She wants to meet tomorrow," I said, my voice barely steady. "And she's still making threats." Jessica read the message over my shoulder and cursed under her breath. "This has gone way beyond family drama. She's actively trying to intimidate you now." Mom looked stricken. "I raised both of you girls. How did I miss that Monica was capable of something like this?" "Because you're a good person who assumes the best in people," I said gently. "That's not a flaw, Mom. That's who you are." But privately, I was wondering the same thing. How long had Monica been harboring this level of resentment? How many other small cruelties had I missed or dismissed over the years? The sister I thought I knew was dissolving before my eyes, replaced by someone calculating and vindictive. "You can't go alone," Jessica said firmly. "Whatever she's planning, you shouldn't face it by yourself. But if I don't follow her rules, she'll escalate things. She's made that clear. And if you do follow her rules, she'll have you exactly where she wants you," Jessica countered. "This is manipulation, classic intimidation tactics. The moment you give her that kind of control, you've already lost." I looked between Jessica and Mom, both of them worried and protective, both of them trying to help me navigate something none of us had experience with. The weight of the decision felt crushing. Outside, the late afternoon was giving way to evening, and the cheerful sunlight was fading into something dimmer and more uncertain. Just like everything else in my life right now. My phone buzzed one more time with another message from Monica. "Don't even think about bringing backup. I know things about you that would ruin everything you've worked for. Things Mom doesn't know, things Jessica doesn't know, things that would make the drug rumors look like a compliment." My blood ran cold as I realized that tomorrow's confrontation was going to be worse than I'd imagined. I stared at Monica's latest message until the words blurred together. Things Mom doesn't know, things Jessica doesn't know. My mind raced through every possible secret she might think she had on me, every moment from our shared childhood and adolescence that she could twist into ammunition. The truth was, I couldn't think of anything genuinely damaging. I'd been a relatively boring teenager and an even more boring adult. But Monica had already proven she didn't need actual ammunition to destroy my reputation. She'd built an entire drug addiction narrative out of thin air. What could she construct if she really put her mind to it? "What does the message say, honey?" Mom asked gently, noticing how I'd gone completely still. I couldn't bring myself to read it aloud. Instead, I handed her the phone and watched her face change as she processed Monica's words. The color drained from her cheeks, and her hands started trembling slightly. "This is threatening behavior," Mom said quietly. "This isn't just sibling rivalry or family drama anymore. She's actively trying to terrorize you." Jessica read it next and immediately started pacing around Mom's living room like a caged animal. "No, absolutely not. You're not going to that meeting. This has crossed every possible line. But even as they both rallied around me, I could feel the insidious poison of Monica's strategy working. Because the thing about threats is that they don't have to be based in reality to be effective. They just have to make you doubt yourself, make you wonder what ammunition your enemy might actually possess. I found myself mentally cataloging every mistake I'd ever made, every embarrassing moment, every time I'd bent the truth or made a poor decision. Normal human flaws and failures, nothing that should matter to anyone. But Monica had already demonstrated her talent for weaponizing the mundane. I keep trying to understand her endgame, I said, my voice sounding distant even to my own ears. What does she actually want from all this? To destroy my relationship with our family? To humiliate me? Or is she just enjoying the power trip? Mom sat down heavily on the couch, looking older than I'd seen her in years. I've been thinking about that too, and I keep coming back to your promotion at work last month. Do you remember how quiet she got when you told everyone at dinner? The memory came flooding back. I'd been so excited to share the news, and Monica had barely said congratulations before changing the subject. At the time, I'd assumed she was distracted or having an off day. You think this is about my job? I asked. I think this might be about a lot of accumulated resentments that she's never dealt with in a healthy way, Mom said carefully. But the timing isn't coincidental. Jessica stopped pacing and looked at me intently. Think about it. She's not just spreading rumors randomly. She's specifically targeting your reputation in ways that could affect your career. Drug addiction rumors at your workplace, making family members question your judgment and reliability. These aren't just personal attacks. The realization hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just about family dynamics or sibling rivalry. Monica was systematically trying to undermine the professional success I'd worked years to achieve. The promotion she'd barely acknowledged was apparently the trigger for a campaign designed to tear down everything I'd built. But that's so calculated, I whispered. So deliberately cruel. How do you plan something like that against your own sister? Mom reached over and took my hand. I don't know, sweetheart. But what I do know is that we're not going to let her succeed. The weight of Monica's threats felt suffocating, but looking at Mom and Jessica, both fierce and protective and completely in my corner, I felt something else too. A growing determination not to let my sister's jealousy and manipulation define my life or destroy my relationships. My phone buzzed with one final message from Monica. Tick-tock, tomorrow at 2 p.m. Come alone, or I start making phone calls to your workplace tonight. The silence that followed Monica's final text felt like a held breath. I stared at the screen until the words blurred, my hands trembling slightly as the full weight of her ultimatum settled over me. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. The precision of it made my stomach clench. She's really doing this, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She's actually threatening to call my work. Jessica moved to sit on the coffee table directly in front of me, her presence grounding me in the moment. Let me see the message. I handed over the phone, watching her face darken as she read. Mom leaned over to look as well, and I saw her jaw tighten in a way that reminded me of all the times she'd defended me as a child, though this felt infinitely more serious than scraped knees or playground bullies. The audacity, Mom said, shaking her head. Come alone, like she's some kind of movie villain. Her tone carried a bitter edge I rarely heard from her. And threatening your livelihood. That's not just cruel. It's potentially illegal. The living room suddenly felt too small, the familiar comfort of Mom's house somehow insufficient against the magnitude of what Monica was planning. I could picture her tomorrow, sitting somewhere with her phone, methodically dialing my workplace, my boss's direct line, maybe even the HR department. The stories she'd tell, delivered with just the right mix of concerned sister and reluctant whistleblower. I keep thinking about what you said, I told Mom, trying to organize the chaos in my mind. About the promotion being the trigger. But there's something else too. Remember when she applied for that marketing position at her company? The one she didn't get? Mom nodded slowly. She was bitter about that for weeks. That was right before all this started, I realized. She gets passed over for a promotion, then I get mine a few weeks later, and suddenly I'm supposedly spiraling into drug addiction. Jessica set my phone down on the coffee table with deliberate care. It's textbook projection. She's feeling like a failure, so she has to make you fail too. Level the playing field by destroying your success. The psychology of it made sense, but understanding Monica's motivations didn't diminish the very real threat she posed. My career wasn't just a job to me. It was 5 years of climbing from an entry-level position, building relationships, earning trust, proving myself in a competitive field. The thought of Monica casually dismantling all of that with a few well-placed phone calls made me feel physically ill. What if I just don't show up tomorrow? I asked. What if I call her bluff? Is it a bluff, though? Mom asked gently. Because everything she's done so far suggests she's deadly serious. The weight of that truth settled over me like a heavy blanket. Monica had already proven she was willing to lie to our relatives, to fabricate detailed stories about my supposed addiction, to systematically undermine my relationships. Why would she hesitate to extend that campaign to my workplace? I feel trapped, I admitted, the words coming out thick with frustration. If I go meet her, I'm playing into whatever game this is, but if I don't, she follows through on her threats. Either way, she wins. Jessica reached for my hands, her grip warm and steady. That's exactly how she wants you to feel. Trapped, powerless. But you're not as helpless as she's trying to make you believe. What do you mean? Think about what she's actually offering. She wants to meet with you, alone, to discuss some kind of terms. That suggests she thinks there's something to negotiate, something she wants from you beyond just destruction. Mom leaned forward, interested. You think she wants something specific? I think she wants control, Jessica said. And acknowledgement. She wants her sister to come crawling, to validate her power over the situation. But that also means she's not just randomly lashing out anymore. She's thinking strategically, which gives us room to think strategically too. The idea that this could be approached like a problem to solve rather than a disaster to endure was oddly comforting. I'd built my career on analyzing challenges and developing solutions. Maybe I could apply those same skills here, even if the problem was my own sister. So what would a strategic approach look like? I asked. Documentation, Mom said immediately. Everything she's sent you, every lie she's told, every person she's manipulated, we make a record of all of it. And witnesses, Jessica added. She wants you to come alone because she knows her behavior doesn't hold up under scrutiny. But that doesn't mean you have to face the aftermath alone. I felt something shift inside me, a subtle movement from despair toward determination. Monica had spent weeks making me feel isolated and defensive, but sitting here with Mom and Jessica, I realized how wrong she was about my support system. There's something else, I said, an idea beginning to form. She's been so focused on making me look unstable and unreliable. But what if we turn that around? What if we let her own behavior speak for itself? The look that passed between Mom and Jessica told me they were thinking along the same lines. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt like we might actually have a plan. But first, I had to get through tomorrow's meeting. And as confident as I was beginning to feel with my allies beside me, the thought of facing Monica alone still made my heart race with dread. The morning of the meeting arrived gray and drizzling, the kind of weather that seemed to seep into your bones and settle there. I stood at my bedroom window, watching droplets trace lazy paths down the glass, while my coffee grew cold in my hands. The text from Monica had been specific. Noon at Riverside Park, the old pavilion near the duck pond. A public place, but isolated enough for the kind of conversation she apparently had in mind. My phone buzzed with a message from Jessica. "Remember what we talked about. You've got this." The documentation project had kept us busy until nearly midnight. Mom had helped me print out every screenshot, every manipulative text message, every email where Monica had tried to gaslight me into believing I was the problem. Seeing it all laid out on paper had been both validating and heartbreaking. The pattern was so clear when viewed objectively. Each message a calculated step in what could only be described as a campaign of psychological warfare. "You don't have to do this," Mom had said as we organized the papers into a folder. We could just ignore her completely, block her number, refuse to engage. But we all knew that wasn't really an option. Monica had already proven she was willing to escalate when ignored. The stories she'd been spreading about my supposed drug problem had reached 3 different relatives in the past week alone. Aunt Patricia had actually called Mom, expressing concern about whether I needed professional help. The humiliation of having to explain that no, I wasn't secretly struggling with addiction had been almost unbearable. Now, getting dressed for what felt uncomfortably like going into battle, I tried to channel the confidence I'd felt the night before. Gray slacks, a simple blue sweater, nothing that could be interpreted as either confrontational or submissive. I wanted to look exactly like what I was. A stable, professional woman who had nothing to hide. The drive to the park took 20 minutes through streets slick with rain. I parked near the main entrance and walked the winding path toward the pavilion, my umbrella a small shield against both the weather and my growing anxiety. The park was nearly empty except for a few determined joggers and someone walking their dog in the distance. I saw Monica before she saw me. She was sitting on one of the picnic tables under the pavilion roof, her legs dangling, looking for all the world like she was just enjoying a peaceful morning in nature. She'd always been good at presenting herself as the reasonable one, the victim, the sister who just wanted to work things out. "You came?" she said when she spotted me, and there was something almost surprised in her voice, as if she'd expected me to back down. "You said it was important." I kept my distance, staying near the pavilion's entrance rather than moving closer to where she sat. The space between us felt charged, like the air before a thunderstorm. Monica slid down from the table and took a step toward me. She looked tired, I realized, dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. For just a moment, she looked less like the calculating manipulator from her text messages, and more like the sister I'd grown up with. "I know you think I'm the bad guy here," she began, her voice softer than I'd expected. "But you have to understand, I never meant for things to go this far." The words hung in the damp air between us. Part of me wanted to believe her, wanted this to be the moment where we somehow found our way back to being family. But Jessica's voice echoed in my mind. Manipulation often comes wrapped in apparent vulnerability. "Then why did they?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. "Go this far, I mean." Monica's expression flickered, and for a split second, I saw something that might have been genuine regret. Then her jaw tightened, and I recognized the look that always preceded her most cutting remarks. "Because you never listen," she said, and there was the anger I'd been expecting. "You think you're so perfect, so put together. Miss Successful career, living in your nice apartment, acting like you're better than the rest of us." The accusation stung because it was so far from how I actually felt about my life or my family. But I could see now how Monica might have interpreted my attempts at independence as judgment of her choices. "I've never thought I was better than you," I said quietly. "I thought we were different people who wanted different things." "Different?" Monica laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Is that what you call it? When you moved away for college and barely came home? When you got your fancy job and suddenly didn't have time for family gatherings? When you started dating someone you've never even brought around to meet us?" The litany of perceived slights caught me off guard. I'd had no idea she'd been keeping score of what she saw as my gradual withdrawal from the family. Some of her points weren't entirely unfair, though her interpretation of my motives was completely wrong. "Monica," I started, but she held up a hand to stop me. "I'm not finished. Do you know what it's like to have everyone constantly compare you to your perfect sister? To hear Mom talk about your promotion while I'm struggling to keep my head above water? To watch you succeed at everything while I can barely hold on to a relationship for more than 6 months?" The raw pain in her voice was unmistakable, and I felt my carefully constructed emotional defenses wavering. This wasn't the conversation I'd prepared for. This felt like something we should have had years ago, before resentment had time to metastasize into something ugly and destructive. But even as I felt sympathy for the hurt behind her words, I couldn't ignore the reality of what she'd done to me these past weeks. "I understand that you've been hurting," I said carefully. "But Monica, you told our family that I'm addicted to drugs. You've been trying to convince people that I'm mentally unstable. That's not dealing with sibling rivalry or feeling overlooked. That's something else entirely." Her face went through a series of expressions, settling finally on something that looked almost like defiance. "Maybe if you'd paid attention before, I wouldn't have needed to get creative to get your attention now." The casual way she dismissed the damage she'd done made my stomach clench. This wasn't about hurt feelings or family dynamics. This was about control, just like Jessica had said. "So, what happens now?" I asked. "What did you want to discuss that was so important it couldn't wait?" Monica moved closer, and I fought the urge to step back. Her eyes held an intensity that made me deeply uncomfortable. "I want you to come home," she said. "Really home. Move back. Be part of this family again instead of floating around the edges like you're too good for us. Show everyone that we're okay, that we've worked things out." The request was so unexpected that I almost laughed. After weeks of trying to destroy my reputation and relationships, she wanted me to uproot my entire life to make her feel better about our dynamic. "And if I don't?" Monica's smile was sharp and cold. "Then I guess people will keep wondering about those strange mood swings of yours. Uncle Robert was very concerned when I mentioned how erratic you've been lately. And you know how he talks." The threat hung between us like a blade. Uncle Robert, who worked at the hospital where my company had been hoping to land a major contract. Uncle Robert, who played golf with half the business leaders in my industry. I stared at my sister, this person I'd shared a childhood with, who knew exactly which pressure points would cause me the most damage. The rain had picked up, drumming against the pavilion roof with increasing intensity, and I realized that whatever happened next would change everything between us forever. But as I looked at Monica's expectant face, waiting for me to crumble under the weight of her ultimatum, I felt something unexpected rising in my chest. Not fear, but a kind of crystalline clarity. She'd made a crucial mistake. She'd shown me exactly how far she was willing to go, and in doing so, had revealed the true scope of what I was dealing with. This wasn't going to end with negotiation or appeasement. This was going to require something much more decisive. "I need some time to think about what you've said," I told her, pulling out my phone as if checking the time. What I was really doing was starting a voice recording, something Jessica had suggested as a backup plan. Monica's eyes narrowed slightly. "How much time?" "A few days. This is a big decision." She studied my face, looking for signs of capitulation or defiance. I kept my expression carefully neutral, letting her interpret my response however she chose. "Don't take too long," she said finally. "People are already talking. It would be a shame if the stories got worse." As I walked back through the rain to my car, I could feel Monica watching me go. But for the first time in weeks, I wasn't afraid of what she might do next. I had a plan now, and more importantly, I had everything I needed to put it into action. The recording device in my pocket had captured every word of her threats, including her casual admission that she'd been deliberately spreading lies about me to our family. Combined with the documentation we'd compiled the night before, I finally had proof of what she'd been doing. But as I drove home through the gray afternoon, I couldn't shake the image of the pain in Monica's eyes when she'd talked about feeling overlooked and compared. Understanding her motivations didn't excuse her behavior, but it complicated my feelings about what needed to happen next. My phone rang just as I pulled into my driveway. Mom's name appeared on the screen, and I realized that whatever I decided to do about Monica, I wouldn't be doing it alone. The real question was whether my sister had finally pushed things too far to ever find a way back to being family again. I sat in my car for a long moment after hanging up, staring at the rain streaking down my windshield. Mom's voice had carried that particular tone she got when she was trying to hold everything together while the world fell apart around her. She'd asked me to come over, said we needed to talk about Monica, and there was something in the way she said my sister's name that made my stomach clench. The drive to my childhood home felt longer than usual. Each familiar street corner weighted with memories of simpler times when Monica and I had been allies instead of enemies. The house looked smaller somehow in the gray afternoon light, its yellow siding dulled by the persistent drizzle that had been falling since my confrontation with Monica at the park. Mom opened the door before I could knock, her face drawn with exhaustion. She'd aged in the past few weeks, I realized with a start. New lines bracketed her mouth, and her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. "Come in, sweetheart," she said, stepping aside. "I made coffee." The familiar smell of our old kitchen coffee and the lingering scent of Mom's lavender hand soap should have been comforting, but instead, it felt like stepping into a minefield. I could see the tension in the way Mom's shoulders held themselves, the careful way she moved around the kitchen island as if navigating around invisible obstacles. "Where's Monica?" I asked, settling into my usual spot at the kitchen table. "She's not here. She doesn't know you're coming." Mom set a mug in front of me, her hands trembling slightly. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. Monica had finally convinced Mom that I was using drugs, and now I was about to watch my mother choose between her daughters. The recording device felt heavy in my pocket, but I couldn't bring myself to reach for it yet. "Okay," I said carefully. Mom sat across from me, wrapping her hands around her own mug as if it were an anchor. "Monica came to see me yesterday. She was very upset, crying, saying she was worried about you. She told me some things that Mom's voice cracked. I've been losing sleep over this. The kitchen felt too small suddenly, the walls pressing in. Outside, I could hear the rain picking up again, drumming against the windows with increasing intensity. The sound reminded me of Monica's voice at the pavilion, calm and measured as she delivered her ultimatum. What kind of things? I asked, though I already knew. Mom's eyes filled with tears. She said you've been acting erratic, that you've been lying to the family about your job, that she's found evidence you might be using drugs. She showed me screenshots of text messages that seemed... She paused, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. I didn't want to believe it, but some of the things she said made sense of behavior I'd been worrying about. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Not just Monica's lies, but the realization that Mom had been watching me, cataloging my behavior, looking for signs of the addiction my sister had planted in her mind. Mom, I started, but she held up a hand. Let me finish. Please. She took a shaky breath. I was going to confront you directly, maybe suggest treatment options or counseling. But then something happened that made me question everything Monica told me. Hope flickered in my chest. What happened? Jessica called me this morning. My coffee mug froze halfway to my lips. Jessica had called Mom. Despite all our careful planning, despite agreeing to let me handle this my own way, Jessica had gone around me. She said she needed to talk to me about Monica, that there were things I needed to know before I made any decisions about you. She asked if she could come over. Mom's voice grew steadier as she continued. I almost said no. I was so confused and hurt, and I wasn't sure I could trust anyone's version of events anymore. Did you see her? She's in the living room. The words hit me like ice water. Jessica was here, in this house, right now. She'd gone behind my back and involved herself directly with my mother, crossing a line we'd never discussed, but that felt fundamental to our friendship. She's been waiting for you, Mom continued. She said she had things to show me, but that you should be here when she did. She said it was important that we all deal with this together. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the linoleum. Anger and relief warred in my chest, along with something that might have been gratitude. Jessica had risked our friendship to protect me, but she'd also made decisions about my life without consulting me. How long has she been here? About an hour. We've mostly been sitting in silence, to be honest. I think she's as nervous as I am. Mom stood too, smoothing down her sweater with hands that still trembled slightly. There's something else, though. Something I need to tell you before we go in there. The kitchen suddenly felt airless. What? Monica called while Jessica was here. She wants to come over for dinner tonight. She said she had more to tell me about your situation, that she'd found additional evidence. Mom's voice dropped to almost a whisper. I told her yes. The implications crashed over me like a wave. Monica would be here in a few hours, expecting to find a mother primed for an intervention, ready to believe whatever new lies my sister had prepared. Instead, she'd walk into whatever Jessica had planned, with me present and Mom potentially armed with the truth. What time? I asked. 6 o'clock? I looked at the kitchen clock. It was barely 3. We had less than 3 hours to undo weeks of systematic manipulation, and I still didn't know what Jessica had told Mom or what she planned to reveal. The sound of footsteps on hardwood made us both turn toward the living room. Jessica appeared in the doorway, her face carefully neutral, but her eyes bright with determination. I heard voices, she said simply. Are you ready to do this? Mom looked between us, confusion and hope warring on her face. Do what, exactly? Jessica's gaze met mine, and I saw the question there. She'd gone out on a limb for me, but she was still giving me the choice of how far to take this. The recording in my pocket felt warm against my leg, and I thought about Monica's face in the park, the casual way she'd threatened to destroy my reputation. Show her everything, I said. But even as the words left my mouth, I couldn't shake the feeling that once we opened this door, there would be no going back. In 3 hours, Monica would walk into this house expecting one kind of confrontation and find something entirely different waiting for her. Jessica moved to the coffee table where her laptop sat open, along with what looked like a small stack of printed papers. My mother settled into her usual spot on the couch, but I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands gripped the armrest. Before we start, I said, pulling the recording device from my pocket. There's something I need you to hear first, Mom. Jessica's eyebrows shot up. You recorded her? Yesterday, at the park. I set the device on the coffee table, my finger hovering over the play button. Monica doesn't know about it. The weight of what I was about to do settled over me like a heavy blanket. Once Mom heard Monica's voice admitting to the lies, there would be no pretending this was just a misunderstanding between sisters. This would change everything in our family, possibly forever. What kind of recording? Mom asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The truth, I said, and pressed play. Monica's voice filled the room, casual and confident. You think I'm going to let you waltz back into this family like nothing happened? Like you didn't abandon us when Dad got sick? I watched my mother's face go pale as the conversation continued, as Monica's voice grew more venomous, admitting to the planted evidence, the carefully constructed lies. When Monica's laugh echoed through the speakers after threatening to destroy my reputation completely, Mom's hand flew to her mouth. The recording ended, and the silence that followed felt deafening. Mom stared at the device like it might bite her. That's really her voice, she said finally. It wasn't a question. Yes. And she made all of it up? The pills in your room? The stories about you acting strange? Jessica leaned forward. That's what I wanted to show you. I started documenting things after I got suspicious about some of the things Monica was saying. Look at this. She turned her laptop screen toward us. It showed a spreadsheet with dates, times, and detailed notes. March 15th. Monica texts me saying she's worried about you, mentions finding paraphernalia in your bathroom. But you were at work all day that day. I checked because we were supposed to meet for lunch, and you had to cancel for a meeting. My stomach twisted as I realized Jessica had been quietly investigating this for weeks. March 22nd. Monica calls your mom saying you seemed out of it during a family dinner the night before. But there was no family dinner. I have your credit card statement showing you bought groceries and stayed home. Mom was shaking her head slowly, like she was trying to wake up from a bad dream. But why would she? I don't understand why Monica would do this. The recording device sat between us like evidence at a trial, and I realized my mother was asking the question I'd been avoiding. Why had my sister dedicated so much energy to destroying me in our family's eyes? She told me why, I said quietly. She blames me for not being here when Dad was dying. She thinks I abandoned the family, and this is her way of punishing me. But you were in graduate school. You came home every weekend you could afford to. Mom's voice was getting stronger, anger creeping in. You were here at the end. You held his hand when he... She couldn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. We all remembered those final days in the hospital. Jessica was still scrolling through her notes. There's more. I started taking screenshots of her text messages to me. especially the ones where she'd ask me not to tell you certain things because you were too fragile to handle them. The room felt like it was spinning slightly. The systematic nature of Monica's campaign was becoming clearer, and it was worse than I'd imagined. She hadn't just been spreading lies, she'd been isolating me, using Jessica and Mom's love for me as weapons. "What time did you say she was coming over?" Jessica asked. Mom looked at the clock on the mantel. 6 o'clock, in about 2.5 hours. "Good," Jessica said, and there was something almost predatory in her smile. "That gives us time to prepare." I felt a chill run down my spine. Prepare for what? But I was already starting to understand. Monica was walking into a trap of her own making, expecting to find a family ready to stage an intervention for my fictional drug problem. Instead, she'd find 3 people who knew exactly what she'd been doing. The question was, what happened to our family after that? The 2.5 hours stretched ahead of us like a canyon we had to cross. I found myself pacing between the living room and kitchen while Mom and Jessica worked out what they called the approach. "We can't just ambush her," Mom was saying, though her voice carried an edge I rarely heard. "She's still my daughter." "And I'm still your daughter too," I said, stopping mid-pace. "The one she's been systematically destroying for months." The words hung in the air, heavier than I'd intended. Mom's face crumpled slightly, and I immediately felt guilty for pushing so hard. But the anger was building inside me like pressure in a kettle, and I wasn't sure I could contain it much longer. Jessica looked up from her phone, where she'd been reviewing her screenshots. "What if we just let her hang herself? Let her start the intervention speech, see how far she goes before we stop her?" "That feels cruel," I said, though part of me liked the idea more than I wanted to admit. "Crueler than what she's been doing to you?" Jessica shot back. "She was ready to watch you get cut off from your own family based on complete lies." I sank into Dad's old armchair, the leather worn soft from years of his evening reading. Sitting there, I could almost feel his presence, and I wondered what he would have done in this situation. Dad had always been the peacemaker, the one who smoothed over conflicts between Monica and me when we were kids. But this wasn't a childhood squabble over borrowed clothes or who got the last piece of cake. This was something deeper, more poisonous. "I keep thinking about what she said," I told them. "About Dad dying while I was away. I was only gone for 3 days, attending that conference I couldn't get out of. I came back as soon as the hospital called." Mom reached over and squeezed my hand. "Your father understood. He was proud of you for finishing your degree. But Monica never forgave me for those 3 days. She was here dealing with the doctors, making decisions, holding vigil while I was giving presentations about market research." Jessica closed her phone and looked at me seriously. "That's not your fault. You couldn't have known he would take that turn so quickly." "Monica thinks it is, and maybe part of me thinks it is too." The admission surprised even me. I hadn't realized until that moment how much guilt I'd been carrying, how Monica's campaign had found fertile ground in my own self-doubt. "Is that why you didn't fight back harder?" Mom asked gently. "Because you thought you deserved it?" I considered the question, turning it over in my mind like a stone. Maybe, when she started telling people I was using drugs, part of me thought it was almost fitting. Like I was finally being punished for not being here when it mattered. "Oh, honey," Mom's voice broke a little. "You were here when it mattered. You were here every weekend, every holiday. You held his hand when he died. Those 3 days don't erase everything else." Jessica was shaking her head. "This is exactly what she wanted. She wanted you to feel guilty, to accept her version of events. That's how abusers work. They find your weak spots and exploit them. The word abuser hit me like cold water. I'd been thinking of Monica as angry, misguided, even cruel, but I hadn't framed it as abuse. Yet that's what it was, wasn't it? A systematic campaign to undermine my relationships and my sense of reality. What if she doesn't confess? I asked suddenly. What if we confront her with all this evidence and she just denies everything? Claims we're the ones lying? Then at least Mom will know the truth, Jessica said. And you'll know you tried. Mom was quiet for a long moment, staring at the recording device still sitting on the coffee table. Finally, she spoke. I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me. My heart rate picked up. Okay. Have you ever, even once, used drugs the way Monica described? I'm not judging. I just need to know if there's any kernel of truth in what she's been saying. No, Mom, never. The strongest thing I take is aspirin for headaches. She nodded, and I could see her making some internal calculation. Then Monica has been lying to me for months, systematically, deliberately lying to me about my own daughter's well-being, making me lose sleep, making me worry that I was going to lose another child. The anger in her voice was growing, and I realized that Mom's fury might be even more devastating than mine when Monica arrived. Jessica checked the time on her phone. 45 minutes. Are we really going to do this? I looked around the room where I'd grown up, where we'd celebrated birthdays and holidays, where we'd grieved Dad's death together. In 45 minutes, we'd either begin healing our family or finish tearing it apart. Yeah, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my own voice. We're really going to do this. The waiting was about to end, and the reckoning was about to begin.